I'm giving you a warning. Although this drawing exercise subject looks simple enough, it's just a number of boxes, isn't it? I've had more trouble starting this drawing than any drawing I've ever done, I think. I did my drawing for making marks and getting a sense of what I was doing, and that was sort of okay for what I did, but I didn't manage to pull the marks below eye level down enough. But I thought when I start, I'd be able to do that now. Well, I didn't manage it here. I didn't manage it here. I didn't get that far with this one. I decided with this one, when I'd drawn this much, that I had to change the nib of my pen. So that kind of wasn't my fault, that one. And then with this one, I still hadn't sorted out the perspective angles for this lower part. So for everyone who thinks, oh, it's so easy for you, you make it look so simple, it's not always so simple. Towards the end of the video, I explain what I think the particular issue is, why I had so many stumblings with this, what looks like a relatively simple subject. But let's start. If this gatehouse looks a little on the battered side, there's good reason for that. It's one of the oldest European structures in the city of Sydney, dating from I think around 1820, when the Hyde Park barracks behind it were built. It's also a surprisingly difficult exercise in perspective, because the sandstone blocks are so prominent in it that we really can't leave them out, and yet those courses of stonework present very clear and definite and angled perspective for the scene. And then we have just a little bit of detailing to make it more complex, and I really struggled to get this started even. I also struggled with a pen that kept blotting. So between the two issues, I had quite a number of false starts with this drawing. However, if I wasn't filming, I wouldn't have bothered for an exercise starting again. I would have just persevered over the top and used the lines that I worked out weren't in the right place as a guide to force me to put the lines in the correct place. Even so, for this section of the gatehouse that I'm doing now, the horizontal lines under the window just don't angle down enough. I still didn't get them done quite at a steep enough angle. And then not just do we have this one structure at the end with the window, but then we have a setback doorway, and we have, coming forward slightly again, one of the gateway posts. There is a corresponding structure on the other side of the gate. And so we have all of these vertical lines and all of these angled horizontal lines that have to splay out in the perspective fan pattern. Now, eye level is approximately in the middle of the window that we can see there. And so it angles up and down. And so there's quite a wide difference of angle between the angle that's going upwards and the angle that's going downwards. And these are the sorts of things that even just psychologically, rather than visually, can be hard to get our hand, our arm, our eye to appreciate and to draw adequately. We have a tendency, I think, when there's a wide range of angles up and down within a fairly small area, to want to lessen the impact of whichever angles angle more, whether it's the one that go up, or in this case, I think the lines that angle down actually angle to a greater degree. Now, the architectural detail as such is quite simple, so because of that, it's good just to pay a little more attention to these overhanging capitals and the way that their lines are formed, and to put adequate lines in to create the 3 dimensions. And then we have this very restrained decorative feature on the roof and a very shallow shingled dome, wooden shingled dome. What looks like a little point on the dome actually is a vent from a building further back, I'm pretty sure, because there is another one to the right, which certainly doesn't relate to the gatehouse. This refined style of architecture was common in what's known as the Georgian period of English architecture. So these angles aren't as exact as I like to see them, and so there is endless frustration and attempts to rearrange them as I realize, as I go back over different parts, to try and nudge them more into shape. This is the sort of subject where sometimes the scale at which we draw it makes a huge difference how we draw it. If I were drawing this from further away as a smaller drawing, then I would only be suggesting some of the stonework, and it would in fact be a much easier subject to draw. Or if I was doing a more detailed drawing on a larger scale, then I'd be committed to sorting out all the angles thoroughly before I really started. So I think I just chose the sweet spot of making it very difficult. However, I do want it also to have a sense of a relatively quick drawing, and so I don't want to have everything too sharp and angled, and because it is a fairly battered structure, that's another reason why I don't really want to have it too sharp and angled. So I hadn't really thought about hatching. It was all in shade, this area. We were overshadowed by some skyscrapers, and so even though there was lots of strong golden sunshine all around us, there was none in this particular spot. So there is a fairly even light, and I wasn't sure whether I could improve the overall look by putting a little bit of shadow kind of artificially in it or not. So this is me pondering whether to do that, and now I commit to doing some very rough hatching. The sort of decision where I'm not real sure whether I made the right one. I think at this stage I'm wishing I just hadn't bothered. But after I finish this hatching, I'm thinking, oh, look, it's looking a bit all over the place. So I might as well try and represent some of the battered appearance of the stonework by the different colours, staining, weathering on the actual stonework itself. And so I start to do some of that in a moment. I do a bit more on this gate first. This gate that's going to, in effect, go off the edge of our drawing, if not our paper. This is actually the first time I've gone into the grounds of this building. Much to my surprise, it's in a very, very central part of Sydney where I have often walked past it but never had time to actually look closer at it. Next time, possibly I'll go inside. So here I am just working at trying to create a sense of the staining with different values and the battered weathering of these stones. Again, I didn't want to do every one. I still wanted to give the sense that I was creating the effect without going into the detail too exactly. And gosh, some of these perspective lines don't angle as smoothly in relation to each other as I would like. But as part of a daily drawing exercise program, sometimes just being aware of how much time it does take and how much focus it does take through doing a quick exercise where we realize we haven't taken quite enough time and we haven't observed quite carefully enough is a very good lesson for when we are doing a longer, more considered, more careful drawing. Every time we become aware as we look over our drawing that some of the angles aren't quite right or anything about our drawing is not quite right, it's a very helpful part of the process of learning to draw. It gives us a focus for the next drawings that we do. That's always a good thing. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you have a go drawing this. It's not as straightforward as it looks at first, at least that was my experience, but it's a very helpful learning experience to give it a go. But whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.